signing to y'all, boy. Y'all still need them, but y'all got me a phone.
I would like to know why I'm being held here. You still haven't told me why you brought me here. I didn't steal anything. I've never stolen anything in my life.
Officer. I ain't come like a survivor, no. Y'all come like a survivor, boy. Y'all snatch me up with ice with my girl.
Do I look like the type of person to steal? I was simply walking past the store with my fiancée when several officers grabbed me and brought
I
me
ain't
into
never been
questioning.
around that man store, no, sir. And the next thing you know, like 100 officers was jumping me, boy. Well, mother flip. So just because I was walking past.
Officer, I've never gotten in any problems. I don't even have a speeding ticket. Look, I'm not an idiot. I want to make a phone call before I sign any papers.
Joe, me signed to speak before. I been to school, I ain't no fool.
On a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rank the intelligence of suspect A? On a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rank the intelligence of suspect B? On a scale from 1 to 10, how likely is it that suspect A stole the item? On a scale from 1 to 10, how likely is it that suspect B stole the item? What is the highest level of education you think that suspect A has? Primary, secondary, tertiary. What is the highest level education you think that suspect B has? Primary, secondary, tertiary. Bungie. Now that I have your attention, let's talk about talking Bahamian. In 2009, as an ambitious 6'2" male model college student, along with a couple of classmates, we devised a survey that would give us the ability to gauge the attitudes of the College of the Bahamas' students towards Bahamian Creole English. What that is, babe? I'm glad that you asked that question. People tend to have misconceptions when they hear the word Creole. Usually it's either they're thinking about immigrants or gumbo. Gumbo. But the term Creole isn't so specific. It's a distinct language with multiple parent languages, and usually man-made events help to produce Creoles. Things like slavery, trade, slavery. Slavery really helped to develop. It had a lot to do with it. You see, to make a Creole, you need two things: a superstrate and a substrate. The superstrate is the language of the dominant power. So in the case of slavery, it's the language of the colonists. Slaveholders were English. They'd say things in English like cotton, pick, now. But most slaves were from the west coast of Africa. That's better. And while they had these new words pushed on them, they could still control how they pronounce the words and how they use the words in a sentence. These elements control the flow and the feel of the words. So what happens? Well, when the slaveholders communicated to the enslaved men, that's how you get pigeons. Oh, yeah, the first generation never speaks Creole. They speak some words from the superstrate and they pronounce it like the substrate because it's the children who grow up speaking it and they use it as a natural language, a Creole. It's important to remember that a Creole is not a broken language. So Creole English is not broken English. Creole French is not broken French. And it's super important that you remember that because, as you will see, if we think that Bahamian Creole English is actually faulty and the result of an incompetent speaker whose first language should be English, then you're going to start to think that the person, like their speech, is incompetent. Neither they nor their speech are incompetent. They're just Bahamian. There's a whole bunch of other linguistic things like Basilec speakers, Acrolec speakers, and code switching. But today the question is, what are the attitudes of college students towards Bahamian Creole English? Which actually in Bahamian Creole English is called Bahamian dialect, but that's a whole nother, it doesn't matter. Under the right circumstances, you might be proud of Bahamian Creole English. But is that the same way you feel in other surroundings? If we ask the question wrong, it could make the person feel like they were supposed to answer it in a patriotic way. Or worse, it could be seen as us questioning their ability to speak standard English. How could we get people to answer such a sensitive question honestly? By lying to them. Hence the Criminal Justice Survey 042009. Wait, before you start erasing your results, let's compare them with the students that were originally questioned. Just like you, they were shown a video with two suspects, one that speaks Bahamian Creole English and one that speaks Standard English. We only did this in 14 college-level English classes. And out of those 14 classes, we were able to survey 167 students. On a scale from 1 to 10, the average score for the Bahamian Creole English speaker was 5.5, but the average score for the Standard Bahamian English speaker was 8.25. When asked what was the highest level of education that the Bahamian Creole English speaker had attained, 80% of students didn't think that he went past secondary school, but 82.63% thought that the Standard Bahamian English speaker had been to some tertiary institution. And who did the students think was most likely to steal the item? When asked to judge on a scale from 1 to 10, the average score was 6.82 for the Bahamian Creole English speaker, but it was only 4.58 for the Standard Bahamian English speaker. An even more disturbing trend was that the younger the student was, the smarter and less guilty they saw the Standard Bahamian English speaker. This is a scary thought because the implication of such data would imply that the more a person sounds distinctly Bahamian in both phonology and morphosyntax, the more likely younger generations are to associate them with negative social elements like crime or low exposure to academics. The question would be, would this result be reflected in the wider society? It's hard to believe that Bahamians would have such a clear disdain for their own nation language. Case in point, the popularity of using Bahamian Creole English or Bahamian dialect in advertising has seemingly increased, but was that always the case?
Early on, I remember my early days at ZNS, and they were very, very, very conscious of using proper English.
There was a time when they said, oh, and they talking bad on the radio and all that kind of stuff, you know, but I was proud of the fact that I was doing it in my own dialect.
We had negative response when we first started, when we were doing the radio commercials, but that has diminished because a lot of people appreciate that, you know, we are a country without an identity, and people appreciate the art of using dialect.
We were afraid to use dialect because I think perhaps early on people had issues with their being Bahamian, with their identity.
But that's another paper for another year. One theory of this is, because of its, being Creole, association with the poorer socioeconomic classes and those who lack power in society, it is invariably regarded as an inferior version of the lexifier language. So, just like how Bahamian Creole English may be seen as a broken, corrupt form of English, its speakers may be seen as broken, corrupt members of society, more likely to engage in antisocial behavior. But that's just a theory, right? I mean, what did you write down?